welcome everyone to our quarterly secure strategy review. We have lots of amazing updates from all the members of the product team. To kind of dive us in, let's look at the secure direction page. A lot of updates have been added to this, as well as a lot of the other direction pages. I want to primarily focus today on the one-year plan, though please feel free to read through the entire thing and look at all of the great updates. So first, I want to focus on what we're currently working on from an application security testing leadership. Not only is this a goal for the secure stage, but it is a company-wide theme for fiscal year 22. A couple of the updates. First, since our last meeting, SAST has moved to complete maturity. This is a great big step forward for the static analysis team. Very excited for them. Everyone's excited for them. They're excited for themselves. And that brings us a lot closer to our goal of getting SAST, Dast, and dependency scanning to complete this year. Nicole and Derek will obviously touch on their plans to continue to move their maturity forward. But congratulations to the stack analysis team on getting SAST to complete. We also see users continuing to adopt secure, and it's become a key component of our DevSecOps adoption story. The best example of this alone, or I should say in May alone, we had our .com SaaS users, specifically our Ultimate users, found over 1.7 million vulnerabilities last month. That's a massive amount of adoption and us helping a lot of people be more secure. I also want to highlight one last thing regarding our accomplishments, and that's back at the top. We were just recently placed in the challenger box of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. For those watching the video, we'll include a link so you can go download a copy of the report. This is a massive step forward for GitLab. We have only been doing security for a very short amount of time and are already being recognized as a challenger in the space. And we're definitely positioned to continue to grow and become a application security testing leader. So if you want, please read the report. They say a lot of nice things about us, and we're continuing to drive ourselves forward here. The next item I want to highlight is our goal for security for everyone. We made a big step towards that at the end of last year by moving SaaS and secret detection scanners down to our free tier. The thing I want to highlight for you is that adoption continues to grow. And in fact, we had more than 1 million secret detection scans run by our users last month in May. That's a massive amount of secret detection jobs run, and it's everyone getting to be secure together. One thing that is not doing here soon is machine learning. I do want to highlight a couple of things for everyone watching this video. First, earlier in the month, we acquired a MLAI startup named Unreview, which is focused on automating code reviewer assignments by leveraging machine learning models. I know this is not directly related to secure. However, what it does do is launch our new applied machine learning team. And this team, we're going to be actively staffing over the next 6 months. And after we finish the integration of the Unreview technology, we're going to then switch to 2 security-focused areas. The first is our insider threat category, which is designed to help our customers identify anomalies in both their user and CI runner behavior. And this will, of course, continue to attach to anti-abuse technologies and allow us to be able to help not only ourselves secure our SaaS platform, but help our customers secure their deployments as well. After that, we're going to be working on intelligent code security. And this is going to be allowing us to automatically identify and remediate insecure coding practices. And this will be a component within our own web IDE. It also will allow us to continue to expand what we can do. And Nicole, in previous of these sessions, if I can get words out correctly today, talked about the path past auto remediation is auto healing, and that will begin to be able to be built with our MLAI technology. Now, that's just a very brief overview of all the great things that are happening and setting the stage. As we begin to move over to the team, I want to leave you with 2 points. The first is GitLab is now becoming synonymous with the word security and DevSecOps. And this is due to all the hard work and dedication of the entire sec section, from the product team, marketing team, engineering teams, tech writing, user design, and our UX research teams. Is everyone together is making that a possibility. And of course, it's leading to recognition from analyst firms like Gartner. And then finally, I wanted to personally welcome Hillary Benson to the team. She joined in May as our new Director of Product Management for the SEC section, including both the secure and protect stages. So that's the quick overview. Hillary, do you want to say a quick hello before people start?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's awesome to be here. Thanks, David.
And with that, I believe Matt is the first one to go. So Matt, over to you.
All right, thanks, David. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Cool, so I'm Matt Wilson, product manager on the Threat Insights section, which is mostly focused on vulnerability management. So I want to give a quick recap of some of the top items we've been working on over the last quarter before we jump into the new stuff. It's not on the list, but we have spent a good portion of the last few milestones working on a lot of important structural issues inside vulnerability management and the GitLab platform in general. Much of this has been focused on performance, especially as we've seen greater adoption in very large-scale use cases among clients, making sure that our performance is where we expect it to be there. We're also doing some important work to make things more consistent across the experience. This is using shared components, so you'll see the same experience, whether you're looking at a vulnerability report on a project, at a group level, inside a pipeline, or eventually inside of an MR. Two notable features that were released within the last quarter. The first is creating JIRA issues from vulnerabilities. This is a huge win for teams that continue to use JIRA for their issue tracking. What we found is, in a lot of cases, engineers are working out of JIRA for the actual sort of agile planning side of things, but they're using GitLab's SCM and CI, which means our security teams are able to review vulnerabilities inside of GitLab. Now, to make it easier to get collaboration between JIRA and this is the engineering teams and the security teams for remediation. When you enable this, it's a new setting on existing JIRA integrations, and you pick the project, you pick the issue type, and directly from a vulnerability or a finding, anywhere you could create a GitLab issue, it will actually create an issue directly in JIRA. This works for any combination of GitLab self-managed or cloud, as well as JIRA Cloud and JIRA self-managed. So this is pretty awesome. We've already got one customer out there using this live in the field, and excited to see more folks picking that up. Another big one is security report generalized detail structure. So that's a mouthful, and it's kind of hard to explain what it is. So I'm going to show a picture. Really what this boils down to is we've done a lot of work to make it easier to put rich information inside of the different security reports that come from the GitLab scanners, as well as setting the stage for third-party tools. Now, this could be commercial tools or things that customers choose to integrate themselves, allowing presentation without a lot of additional work. So what the structure does is it basically defines a new evidence field, and we've provided these name types. So you can provide them in any sort of combination. You can even use them nested inside of the reports. And what that's going to do is each of those different types has a rendering behavior. So you just provide a name for the field, the data, and the type, and you get all these fancy things like we have diff components, we have tables, we have simple URLs. And in this case, you can do things like this is a text highlight inside of a table. So it really allows that flexibility to present vulnerability evidence and information without having to go and do schema updates or additional changes. So this is something that's getting released in 14.0 after a lot of work, and we're excited to see where this goes in the future. So now onto the upcoming stuff. First, I want to talk about manually creating a vulnerability. We've actually been working on the back end of this for several releases now, and the first supporting component that should be released in 14.0 or 14.1 is a new API that allows creating a vulnerability record manually. So this is really important because it actually decouples vulnerability record creation from a pipeline job. So it opens up a lot of new use cases. But one that we're going to put into the product is you can manually enter a finding. So this may be for something like, let's say you have a bug bounty program and you've chosen not to, let's say, automate that integration yet, or you want users to be able to report them internally, or maybe you have red team findings. So this will actually let you fill in the same kind of information that you would find on one of our scanner reports, It will create a new vulnerability record in a particular project, and then you can see it in the vulnerability report. You can interact with it, you can triage it, and do remediation efforts just like you would anything in the product today. You can even add evidence. So we plan to have things for like URLs, or if you have a file upload that you'd like to do, you can enrich that information however you want. So we're going to start working on the front end of this in 14.1, and we hope to have this out in the next milestone or two. The next area is auto-resolving of vulnerabilities. So right now in the product, if you have a vulnerability in your default branch that a scanner does not detect in a subsequent scan, will flag that. So you can actually see, hey, this is something I may want to check out, or I can actually maybe just quickly bulk resolve all of those items. But it's status only. So you still have to take that action to manually resolve the vulnerability. For those users that want to automate this process, this is going to be a new setting. So I'm showing you right now, this is our project level settings. It's basically a simple checkbox. When you enable that behavior, anytime a subsequent scan runs in the default branch and a vulnerability is no longer detected by that scanner, it's going to automatically set it to resolve. And oops, went the wrong way here. I wanted to show what that's going to look like in practice. Sorry, I'm misclicking windows here. Get my zoom out of the way. There we go. So we'll leave a message inside. You're going to have a system note that the auto resolve had happened, and it'll show you which pipeline that happened in. And this is going to show up in that vulnerability detail. So something that is going to start again in 14.1, and we're really excited about this. We think this is going to make it a lot quicker, a lot more efficient and scalable process for those organizations that want to automate something they're having to do manually today. And then finally, we would like to focus on the developer side as well. So most of what we do in vulnerability management is geared towards AppSec teams, security professionals, but the development teams certainly interact with security as well inside of GitLab. And we recognize that not everyone is a security expert on the development side. And when we present to them findings from our scanners, they may not necessarily know where to start with something or how to remediate it. So I've actually been working with external training vendors to provide content embedded into that experience inside of GitLab. So again, I'm showing you a configuration screen first, but the idea is that basically there will be a new security training section. Any partner that chooses to have their content available this way will make an entry for them. You can enable whichever vendor you would like to see content for. And then when you get to a vulnerability, what this will basically do is it will make an API call out in order of your selected preference to the vendor. It will look for an identifier and a language. So we already know what language based on the scanner in the project, and it will see if there's a combination that matches. And if so, we'll actually provide you with a link directly out to training. So this would be something targeted at CWE 89 in whatever language this project is in. It's actually going to be smart enough that if you have multiple integrations turned on and it doesn't find it with your primary selection, it will try to fall back and find content from some of the other vendors. So this is something that it's not going to start in the next release or two, a little bit further out, but we expect to see this towards the end of the quarter, starting this work. And that is what I wanted to share. These are definitely going to take us through the end of the quarter on the vulnerability management side. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll pass it over to who's next, Sam?
Yep, thanks, Matt. So on my end, we have the security orchestration category, and that one is actually an overlay category across GitLab. So we're providing functionality for the secure team as well as other teams inside of GitLab. As part of that, we have our alert management functionality, our policy management functionality, and security approvals. So just to share really quickly what we've done in the last 3 months, we reached minimal maturity. We released the alert dashboard as an initial MVC, and then we've done several follow-on enhancements to that alert dashboard. Now that we've got that in place, we've shifted our focus over to policy management. We actually have our initial capability now available behind a feature flag for project level Dast scan execution policies. What we're planning in the next 3 months is to add to that by building a more usable UI to manage those policies and turning that feature flag on by default. After that, we're going to start adding support for the other scan types, including secret detection and SAST as our next 2 priorities, as well as adding support for scanning containers running in production. In the longer term, we want to bring that from the project level up to the group and workspace levels, and also improve the usability and flexibility of our security approvals. Just to give a quick visual on what we're planning to release when we turn that feature flag on, here's some mock-ups of how that'll look in the UI. We'll be adding a new policies tab or policies menu item where you'll be able to get a list of your policies. And at least for the first MVC, you'll be able to edit the YAML that decides what that policy does. More to come here, but that's what we've got planned for the next 3 months. And with that, I'll turn it over to Taylor.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor McCaslin. I'm our product manager for static analysis. One thing I want to quickly highlight is that we are taking over code quality. So we're expanding our footprint. We'll talk a little bit about how that will play into the future of static analysis. But to start, I want to touch on a few items that have helped with both our maturity to complete as well as our AST leadership goal, which David talked about earlier with our maturity to a challenger in the AST Gartner Magic Quadrant. So to start, one of the big transitions that we've made with SAST is that we've actually historically been powered by about a dozen open source static analysis security analyzers. These analyzers have proactively identified millions of vulnerabilities for developers using GitLab every month. But each of these analyzers is language specific and has different technology approaches to scanning. These differences produce an overhead for updating and managing and maintaining additional features that we build on top of these tools and can create confusion when debugging them. We're now starting to standardize these lint-based analyzers on a new technology provider called SimGrup by our friends at R2C for streamlined efficiency and to reduce the number of analyzers we maintain. This also sets us up to be able to offer customers access to the large SimGrup detection rules library that's actively maintained by a community. We have a great relationship with them. They're a full technology partner with GitLab now, so we're excited about the future that this provides for us. Next, I want to talk about the recent configuration tool for secret detection, which has empowered some of the growth that David talked about earlier with our secret detection jobs. This is available to all customers. It's a UI-based configuration tool that makes it easier to enable secret detection with a single click by opening an automated MR to turn on secret detection. This tool has led to that dramatic increase of over 100% growth for secret detection in the last 3 months. We're now consistently running over 1 million jobs, and that continues to grow because of features like this. Now you don't need technical proficiency to be able to turn on these tools. It's as easy as clicking a button. So looking to some of the future items that we're working on, one is our next generation scanning engine. This is going to be for our ultimate customers focused on the AST leadership. And this next generation SAS scanner will be a proprietary tool built on top of some research done by our vulnerability research team. It uses advanced detection techniques like abstract syntax tree parsing. This approach allows this next generation scanner to analyze data and control flow to understand how logic and data flow through source code to identify vulnerabilities more accurately. We'll initially use this approach to improve the accuracy and to reduce false positives from our existing static analysis analyzers by leveraging this next generation scanner to validate findings from our existing tools and mark things as false positives so that you don't need to interact with them. But in the future, this tool also will allow us to expand our detection capabilities to more advanced types of vulnerabilities. This also long-term sets us up to start connecting our security scanners together in a more traditional IAST interactive security testing fashion. In the future, SAST could detect vulnerabilities in source code and then trigger Dast or Fuzzing to actually exercise that area of the code to increase the accuracy of our findings. If you think about it, us being your source code management, CI/CD, and security testing, We have all the pieces to tie all of those together in a really interesting experience without additional configuration or even deployed agents. Further in the future, we'll be able to tie all of these together with suggested solutions and auto remediation within your CI/CD to both analyze and validate that fixes actually resolve vulnerabilities and produce passing CI builds. So very future work that we're working on, but this next generation scanner really sets us up to be able to do that kind of work. Next, I want to talk about briefly our improved vulnerability tracking. This is focused on AST leadership and our ultimate customers. This is known as Tagger internally, but we're working to expand the rollout of this improved vulnerability tracking fingerprinting system, which was also started by research from our vulnerability research team and should help us reduce false positives, specifically with vulnerabilities that move files and lines whenever you're refactoring code. This also hardens our fingerprinting system and builds a foundation for the future for us to do more advanced dismissals like a global dismiss across all of your repositories. The final thing I want to mention is that all of these changes that I've mentioned set the stage for us to really start to apply some of the machine learning that David mentioned that will be coming in the future with our applied ML group. We'll be able to leverage these improvements to power our intelligent code security area of the applied ML group to find more advanced vulnerabilities, to find them faster and at a larger scale. So more to come on this in a future analyzer update. And then one final thing that I want to touch on is that I mentioned earlier, we're taking over code quality with static analysis. Code quality recently introduced a new feature that allows code quality results to be annotated within the MR diffs. This is a feature that we're looking to roll out to static analysis and to our other security scanners as well, to be able to actually bring the security reports that today exist in the MR security widget in line into those code files. So we're actively exploring this right now. There's more details on the direction page, but I just wanted to highlight that this is how we're starting to integrate those experiences together so that developers have a more streamlined experience and we can really drive adoption through usability for our ultimate customers. And with that, that's an overview of our static analysis group. I'll hand it over to Nicole to talk about dependency scanning.
All right. I'm Nicole Schwartz, and I've got the composition analysis group, and we have the dependency scanning and license compliance. And let's see if I can share the correct screen. Woohoo! And I'm going to start with dependency scanning. What we've been working on recently isn't the most visible, but we've been working on infradev and performance items. And I really appreciate my entire group jumping in to help with this company-wide project and really bringing in and making the product just better. It's not visible necessarily in the form of a button or anything, but hopefully everyone is noticing, better performance of GitLab overall. Also, the front end group totally deserves a shout out for the polish items that they've been working on, UI bugs, consolidating our images and icons that we're using to be more consistent throughout the whole product. So these may not be things that you're consciously noticing, but I am hoping that you're just able to focus on what it is that you're trying to accomplish instead of being distracted by, is the spacing on this, off, or why is this icon different than it is in other parts of GitLab? So as for things that are coming up, which are a little bit more exciting because they're a little more feature oriented, we're going to be moving from viable to complete, fingers crossed. We completed our CMS round 1, which confirmed for us the 2 things that we were planning to complete to be complete, using that word a lot in that sentence. And that would be that we have to be easier to enable. So we're borrowing what Taylor did and we're giving you a button to use the default template, so you don't have to go directly into the YAML file and edit that. And once that's adopted, we're going to look at also mimicking and borrowing the configuration. And so if you have certain configuration variables that you feel very strongly should be the first ones in, I'm going to be trying to sort rank which ones I feel are the most useful, and we're going to be introducing them a handful at a time. So it's not going to be all of the variables that we have all at once. So please do share that if you have any kind of preferences. And then the next thing is we're going to be working on showing the paths for your dependencies. And so that's going to help you when you're triaging to tell, is this directly related to the dependency which I introduced, or is this more of something upstream from that? And that could indicate that it's transient, and maybe you can prioritize that lower when you're doing that triage. And those two things really were the main items that everyone kind of needed to consider as they were doing their CMS and we were asking them to complete their jobs. So that should get us to complete, which will be very exciting. And once we get that done, everyone, I'm sure, SBOM, you've probably heard it everywhere lately, all the conferences. We do have an API right now that you can use to go fetch your dependencies, but a lot of people obviously prefer push buttons in the UI, especially if they're not necessarily one of the developers. So we're going to be working to, first off, make that something that you can request that artifact and just pull it out of the UI. And next, we're going to figure out what we can put in the template or enable people to put in the template so that it can become a release artifact. So every time you build, you're getting an SBOM created for that project, and that is included as part of the release evidence. And I believe that a lot of people will appreciate that. We're going to start with SPDX. If you have some other kind of preference, I've heard Cyclone DX, please do let us know, because a lot of them are similar enough that we are hoping we can support multiple different formats. And just for those of you who didn't see that earlier, this is our fancy little button that'll make it bam, you've got dependency scanning, go ahead, do your proof of value. I think you'll like it, hopefully. So let me stop sharing. And I guess the last thing I want to mention is license compliance for the past 2 years has been on life support, which I know has been frustrating to a lot of people. But as soon as we hit complete with dependency scanning, we're actually looking at replacing it. And that may be in the form of us writing it ourselves or finding a different OSS tool. That's going to start with proof of concept. And so I know there's been a lot of requests for, can we move things up from the project to the group level and so on and so forth. And we will be evaluating all of that as part of our gap analysis when we're doing this proof of concept. So if there is something that you feel is not reflected in our checklist for the gap analysis, do share that with me, because that can definitely influence how we're going to implement the new tooling. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Derek.
Cool, thank you. All right, let me share my screen as well. All right, so I will start off going over the things that we have just recently delivered for Dast, and then get into what we are planning on doing in the dynamic analysis group. Our group now contains fuzzing as well as Dast, so coverage guided fuzzing and API fuzzing are also now in the dynamic analysis group. So I've got a few things to go over here, so I'll try to go quickly. The first thing was that in 13.12, we released the GA launch of the on-demand Dast testing. This was very exciting as we finally were able to get a majority of configuration options in there that allow for most of our users to be able to test their applications or their APIs. So this includes authentication as well as additional headers and things like that. Another thing that we released in 13.12 was a beta for our new browser-based crawler. This is an open beta. We're looking for anyone to try this out and give us feedback. So we are very excited about what we're doing with this. This is a completely new area for Dast in being able to launch attacks and crawling and authentication directly from a browser rather than using an older proxy-based approach to Dast testing. And then in 14.0, we are releasing the ability to have aggregated findings for your vulnerabilities within Dast. Dast can find a lot of vulnerabilities across a large website. If you have one vulnerability that's on every single page, you may end up with a lot of findings within Dast. So what this does is it takes all those findings, puts them into a single vulnerability with a list of URLs where it found it, so that you can just go to the report or the dashboard and just see that single one rather than thousands of the same thing repeated. So this should help with usability a whole lot and help with mitigation of these vulnerabilities where the fix is a single change in, say, a server header or something like that. All right, so going on, we are releasing in 14.0 the ability to have a separate template for Dast API. So this traditionally, or before, you were able to have only Dast web app testing or Dast API testing within a CI/CD pipeline in your GitLab CI YAML file. With this being separated out, you can now test the API and the web application in the same pipeline in two separate jobs. So this is the beginning of our integration of the API security scanner to replace what we currently have to immediately give us a lot more features within API scanning for Dast. So that's what we've released. And let me go on to what we're working on. So you can go to our direction page and see our roadmap and see what we're working on. One of the big things is that we are figuring out a way to schedule your on-demand scans. So right now, your on-demand scans can only be run manually. When you go to the page and you click run, with this, you'll be able to set up recurring schedules. You'll be able to schedule a scan for, maybe later in the evening or overnight when your team is not working. So it should help with the usability and figuring out when you can actually run these Dast scans on these environments that may be used by multiple teams or multiple developers. Another thing that we're doing, building off of what Dast and Fuzzing have already done with building up their configuration UI, we will be adding into Dast a way to configure the CI/CD pipeline jobs within the UI rather than relying completely on the YAML. As a part of this, we're also going to be releasing the ability to use the profiles that you build up within this configuration UI within your YAML file. So instead of having to have the entire configuration in the YAML file, you'll be able to just reference a profile that's stored in the database that can be updated quickly and easily. And then we're also like I already mentioned, we have the open beta for the browser-based crawler for Dast. We're spending a lot of time and focus on browser-based scanning. This will include active and passive checks. We are releasing the authentication, the browser-based authentication, which immediately gives us a lot more functionality, especially for applications that have a lot of JavaScript and single-page application, modern web apps type of things. So we're releasing that. And as we go through this next 3 to 6 months, we'll be working on the active and passive vulnerabilities so that we can start to scan apps from their native environment in the browser rather than relying on the proxy to capture everything, which as things go more towards dynamic applications with JavaScript and single page applications, this is going to be very important for testing in the future. Then I also already mentioned that we will be, that we're working on the API security scanner for Dast. We've already started to integrate it in, and that's a part of separating out the Dast API jobs. But this will be the full integration. This immediately gets us support for a lot of different features, such as new and expanded authentication types, being able to specify postman collection or har file rather than just using an open API spec, as well as support for GraphQL and SOAP APIs instead of only REST APIs. All right, for fuzz testing, in the next 3 to 6 months, we're working on corpus management so that you can easily manage your fuzz corpus within the GitLab UI. Another thing we're working on for coverage guided fuzzing is the ability to have continuous fuzzing. Currently, because fuzzing takes place within a pipeline, there is a time limit that is set on this, and we are working on a way to remove that time limit so that you can continuously fuzz applications until you find something. And then finally, we will be working on expanding the authentication methods supported for the API fuzzing. This will actually also improve the authentication methods for Dast API at the same time. And that is all that I have. So I will give it back to David to close us off.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you everyone on the team for taking some time to go over what we have planned for the next quarter and what we enjoyed from the last quarter. I probably should mention this at the beginning, but I'll mention it now that, of course, we at GitLab plan very ambitiously. And so this is us highlighting the things we want to work on. Of course, we plan very ambitiously. And so, and we prefer velocity over predictability. So I would not take this data as a written contract as to what we will be doing. But with that said, again, thank you everyone for watching. I highly recommend, if you've not done this already, subscribe to the Unfiltered channel. Please make sure to like and subscribe wherever those buttons are on the screen. And overall, please give us feedback and check out the links we'll include in the video. Thank you very much, everyone, and take care.